Hello and welcome to another Fungus TCG video. In this series, we are showcasing games from the early core constructed Set 9 metagame. With rotation, Blurple and Amber Steel Aggro are poised to be some of the top contenders. So enjoy some early metagame gameplay in this series. If you like this type of content, definitely like, subscribe, and comment in the video to let me know and help me promote the channel. Let's jump into the deck list. Today we have one of my local aggro players, Richard Eckert, playing Amber Steel Tiana Aggro. This deck looks to apply pressure with high questing characters such as Daisy, Penny, Mr. Arrow, and Nala, while using Tiana and bodyguards to defend them. It has the potential to overwhelm opponents early, but also has a very strong mid game with elements such as Lawrence, Calhoun, and Rhino. These Amber Steel decks are poised to be a top contender in the early Fabled metagame. Today I'm going to be piloting Blurple, another one of the top decks coming into the Fabled Core Constructed metagame. This purple list focuses on trying to stabilize the early game with 8 one-cost cards such as Rafiki and Royal Guard. Madam M Elephant is a unique card in this list that also aims to complicate math and contest early non-evasive board positions, such as the ones presented by Amber Steel Aggro. This deck is looking to ramp to a turn 4 play on turn 3 every game and follow that up with a 5-cost Elsa or Bell to score a 2-for-1 and contest boards. Purple excels in the mid to late game, and we can leverage our high ink advantage, card advantage, and big threats such as Hades and Elsa to outvalue opponents. The constructed rotation left many existing decks from prior core constructed formats in shambles, but Blurple retains many of the strong cards it leveraged before. For what it lost in the rotation, it gained significant power from the new card Dumbo Ninth Wonder, which has the potential to bury opponents in card advantage alongside our evasives. Let's go through the mulligan for this game. On this one, we're going to be on the play. Here in our opening hand, we have some of the things we're looking for early, such as a turn 2 ramp and a 1-cost character contest the board. The most important card we want to see beyond these is a 4-cost card to leverage after our turn 2 ramp. Elsa is a very strong follow-up to our turn 3 play, so we're happy to see it here as well. I'm sending back everything but the Royal Guard, Tipo, and 5-cost Elsa, looking for a 4-cost threat to play on turn 3. With 16 4-costs live in this deck, we are almost certainly going to find one. In our altered hand, we picked up Genie and Bell along with Sail and Into the Unknown. On the play, we'll be looking to play Royal Guard into ramp turn 2, likely Sail, into Genie on turn 3, and forcing action with Elsa on turn 5. Into the Unknown could be an important card in this matchup as well to contest an exerted Tiana. Otherwise, an early Tiana can disrupt our ability to contest their threats and stop aggression. So let's jump into the gameplay for this one. And here you see me starting off on the left in the teal sleeves, and then Richard on the right is going to be on Amber Steel Aggro. Looks like I am inking a Sail this turn 1 and playing Royal Guard, so committing to the Tipo as opposed to the Sail line. Often on the play, I will opt for a Sail as opposed to a Tipo for my turn 2 ramp, but in these aggro matchups, having the body on turn 2 actually can matter. Just having that additional 1 point of damage sometimes to put on a character is going to be really important. Starting off with a Captain Hook, which is great for us. We don't want to see a Daisy if we can help it. Here we play a Tipo and looking to ink our third card for a ramp on turn 2 into our 4-drop on turn 3. Set up pretty well here. It looks like we have really good position to contest the board and just looking to see what aggression he's going to end up on early. These Amber Steel decks are definitely looking to have if they can help it, a turn 1 Daisy Duck on all these matchups. Hook is probably the second best drop they can play. Inking a Lady here is actually a pretty good one for us as well. Some of the most aggressive draws they have in these decks are the double Lady starters, where they can just vomit their hand onto the board too quickly for us to kind of compete. So turn 2 playing a bodyguard here, which again kind of signals that we can, but is able to get a lure on the board. We should be able to actually contest this here, especially with the Genie. That's a note that you should be aware of if you're playing this purple deck is that the Royal Guard combined with the Genie does make it a 3/2 on the attack. So something to consider as you're playing this deck is always kind of factor in that Genie. It looks like I drew a Madam M Elephant here, which is actually interesting. Another reason to play a Tipo early in this game is to just get that Madam or Elephant early on the board, it really contests the damage elements that you have out of that steel deck. And we did put a point of damage on the Sleepy just to, you know, have it ready for the World Guard to finish off next turn. Potentially playing that Genie next turn to give it another draw, or just play an Elsa out here. Amber still comes out really fast here with a Lady into a Nala, questing one with his bodyguard. Those bodyguards definitely gum up the board a lot on the Amber Steel side and can be kind of a pain. Inking that Tipo that we bounced last turn with the Madam M Elephant. And then kind of considering here probably Elsa versus Belle and kind of how this math lines up. You definitely want to consider, how exactly I can take down the most characters every turn when we're playing against this kind of deck. And between Elsa and Belle, sometimes that math can be fairly complicated. So the Royal Guard here is a 2 attacker. We have the Madam Elephant as the 3 attacker. So looking just to see which one we want to exert here. In this case, I am looking at probably the Lady is the card I am looking to exert, just because we don't have enough to punch down that Nala just yet, because we're going to have to attack that bodyguard. So between the Madam M Elephant and the Royal Guard, we were able to punch out that bodyguard and actually hit the Lady as well. In this case, I chose to put the damage on my Elephant. That way it can move that damage at the beginning of the next turn. And here he plays a Lilo just to punch back a little bit on this board so that Madam Mim doesn't disrupt him even more. But we have a fairly decent control of the game at this point. If that Madam Mim Elephant had been able to live, we would be able to move those damage counters onto the Nala and realistically just, get a 2-for-1 just based off of that. Here we have another Elsa to tap down that Lilo. And we don't have a clean answer to this Nala. We'll end up having to challenge it with multiple characters just because of the resist. But that is the priority right now, is just maximizing or minimizing his ability to gain lore from our side on purple. So just leaving that Daisy here. And Daisy is a card that we'll find as you play this matchup and kind of in this format in general. We want to kind of deprioritize. And the reason for that is Daisy often will draw you several cards over the course of the game. So if you do have other 2 questers that you can contest potentially turn over turn, Daisy is probably the one I will leave up the most, just because those extra cards can turn into stuff like Elsa's, can turn into stuff like Belle Accomplished Mystic that can put us in a position to, actually play those cards for value and get a lot of extra card draw off of them and get those 2-for-1s to contest the board. So here we have the ability to punch out this Daisy, but we'd like to get a couple of more, develop a little more to the board so that he's not able to come back too much here. So punching this Daisy down with 2 different Elsas. Of note, the damage on these Elsas is important. We do want to have 3 damage on an Elsa if we can, or at least 2 damage on an Elsa to set up for Belle Accomplished Mystics. It looks like I goofed and put a damage counter on one that we had before. I believe that Elsa has 2 damage still remaining from punching out the Lady from the prior turns. So just deliberating the math here and seeing what's the best course of action. We do want to try to take out 2 of these characters if we have any ability to do so. So if I have like a Belle Accomplished Mystic, that's usually a good line we can take here. Otherwise, just want to be developing to the board so we can turn on a dime when we need to. These Amber Steel decks, if you let them get to a relatively high lore in the early game, sometimes in the mid game, they can really close the door by just playing 2 quest characters off the top of the deck and just little by little, getting there before you're able to win. In this case, we coasted with a couple of the Elsas, set up the Dumbo for next turn to start drawing cards. Richard finds the bodyguard off the top, and then quest for another 4 with the Daisy and the Penny, something we weren't able to stop last turn just because of the way it played out, and both those cards were unexerted. Didn't have the bell really to put damage on anything and move anything, but we have the correct cards to be able to contest this board, punch through this bodyguard, and then take out all the rest of his board. The Dumbo plays a really critical role here in matchups like this, where we have all these evasives kind of left over in our deck, and being able to just pay 1 tap to exert and draw a card with remaining bodies keeps our action healthy and keeps us to be able to get to things to close the door like Hades, like 8 cost Elsa, or even just more of these 5 cost Elsas and the Bell Accomplished Mystics. Those kind of cards are really important in this mid to late game because once they're playing unexerted characters and they're a very high lore count, we really rely on those cards to be able to actually win the game and leverage from that mid to late game. So being able to just use extra ink here to draw cards while we're contesting these boards is really important. And here we have quite a few characters left, continuing to progress our board. Stopping the bleeding in the early game because Richard didn't have a very aggressive start early really was important for us to be able to get to the spot and be able to leave up something like this Daisy here. If he had started on a Daisy and had one of the more aggressive draws the deck is capable of, we might have been in real trouble here with this phase of the game. But as it stands on the play, we had a very good curve and really all the pieces we wanted to see. We have a healthy hand at this point. We should be mostly done here. That is one of the big differences in this Amber Steel deck today versus what it looked like in prior metagames. Is they did have a higher density of 2 costs, or 2 quester characters and 3 quester characters with stuff like Piglet and so on that could get a lot of value just bridging from that early game to the mid game. But they do have to play now cards like Captain Hook and cards there that aren't as slanted towards being aggressive just because the card quality is not necessarily there what it used to be. So a lot more viable strategies are actually, available in this newer metagame just because things have slowed down quite a bit. And here we just wasn't able to progress another threat, so we're really in the driver's seat, just drawing as many cards as we want to. Going a little bit wider with another genie here. And of course, this Dumbo is going to let us draw as many cards as we want, basically, for the ink. This is really where something like this Dumbo shines, is where, you have a deck that doesn't have the ability to remove this thing early. It really can just convert all that extra ink that Blurple ends up with into card draw and keep the momentum going. And here, all these card draws combined with the Royal Guard were able to actually punch out that Daisy by itself. So an interaction, if while you're playing Blurple, that you definitely should be aware of is stuff like Finders Keepers and your draws from your Genies, draws from your Dumbos can make that Royal Guard hit for quite a bit. And here you'll see me prioritize using the Dumbo draw instead of just questing with Genie here. One of the reasons you might want to do that is just to make sure that you do have answers for their top deck threats. So something like a Hades, something like Elsa, or a Bell Accomplished Mystic were going to be really important for us into this part of the game, because if the top deck threat is able to quest for 2, we may be in danger. And here we have Hades kind of to shut the door. We should be close to actually winning the game here very soon. And here we can quest for quite a bit with all the genies. And I don't see him coming back, even with some more 2 quest characters. Should be lethal here. As things wrap up here, I'll mention some of the specifics that are in this Blurple deck that might not be in other Blurple lists. 8 1-drops is kind of a concession to trying to beat this Amber Steel Aggro deck and some of the other aggressive decks that are in the field. The Madam Mim Elephants is another one that's really big here. Madam Mim, as you kind of saw there, is with that 7 willpower, it's just really difficult for these steel decks to deal with. If you can punch a character that has, 2 power with a Madam Mim Elephant, what often can happen is they have to trade up and kill that Madam Mim Elephant immediately. Otherwise, she's able to, at the beginning of the turn, move that damage and start picking off their characters one by one. So, really important for this matchup. If you enjoyed this video and you gained something from it, definitely give me a like and subscribe down below. And let me know in the comments what deck you are looking at playing in this new core constructed metagame. What are you interested in? Thanks again for checking me out. Have a good one.